This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to once meet you again so that we can continue with our lesson. It's my pleasure since we met in our last lesson. Also, we met in the University of Nairobi during that Kenya airlift program. Now, I'll straight go to my notebook so that we can handle our classes. We'll start with a recap from our last lesson. The first thing which we covered, it was expression, and under expression, we gave out the definition of expression. After we did that, we gave out some of the examples of expression, and these were addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, flow division, modulus, and the powers. We handled the binary and unary operation. After that, we did learn that Python has got a limit, and it can handle up to a certain limit. Anything above that, we learned that Python is unable to compute. We did further examples where we computed some flow division, modulus, and what have you. Now we did errors. We found out that we have got different types of errors. We covered syntax error, its example of a syntax error. We covered runtime errors, their examples. And the last thing that we were yet to cover, it was logic error. And logic errors arises when a program contains an error, but the interpreter is unable to detect it. So anytime you encounter a logic error, this is where now um, the, the program contains an error, but the interpreter is unable to detect that error. Therefore, these errors tend to be most difficult to find and repair, and tools such as debuggers frequently are used to help locate and fix logic errors, but these tools are far from automatic in their operation. Arithmetic examples, you are given uh, that formula. That is a scientific formula, and it is normally used in chemistry. Now you have been given that degrees Celsius is equals to 5/9 times, in parentheses, Fahrenheit minus 32. That means now with that formula, you can play between degrees centigrade and Fahrenheit, or you can convert to Fahrenheit or degrees centigrade. Now you have been given a function below. They want you now to convert the Fahrenheit into degrees centigrade. And the first thing you need to know is my first line of code. I've said degrees in Fahrenheit is equals to eval.input. That means what I'm going to input will be in Fahrenheit. Then Python will convert it to degrees centigrade according to algorithm that I would have written. Now, I told you in our last session that eval, this allows you to enter your values either in integer or in float. Therefore, you are free. You don't need to specify if it is an integer or a float. So you have been asked to perform the conversion. So this conversion is degrees. You are using that formula, and then to report the results. And whenever you report the results in Python programming language, that means now we're going to use the print function, because the print function is the one which will report the results. Let me run this cell so that you can internalize. For example, I want to enter this 10,000, and this 10,000 I want to be a float function. And you have seen very well in my code, I've not specified if it will be a float or an integer. But by the fact I've started with eval, Python will know by itself that this is a float function. So 10,000, I'm entering 10,000.45. I want this to be converted to degrees centigrade. So when I press enter, it will be converted to be 555.38.02 degrees centigrade. Then now, in our second example, I want now to enter time, and this time I want to enter in seconds. So that function in cell 2, I want it to compute this time in hours. Uh, I want it to subdivide this time in hours, minutes, and seconds. So from that function which I've written, you can see I want it to be changed to hours from seconds, which I would have entered. Then I want it to be changed to seconds from the same seconds which I would have entered. Then I want it to be changed to minutes. So I want my time to be segregated into hours, minutes, and seconds. So when I run, it tells me to enter the number of seconds that I want it to be converted to hours, minutes, and seconds. So let me enter 10,000. When I enter this 10,000, then I press my enter. I will find out that it is 27 hours, 46 minutes, and 40 seconds. Now, in that case, you can see it is 47 hours, 46 minutes, 40 seconds, But you might ask yourself that maybe I want this time to be separated uh, uh, by a comma. What can I call a full colon? I want it to be separated by a full colon. How are you going to separate it by a full colon? As you can recall earlier, we did a sep function. And a sep, this is short form of separate. A sep function is a function that we will use to separate this time in hours, minutes, and seconds. As you can see, I've entered the same function, but now in this case, you can see here, when I want to print the output, I say print the output, and this output is hours, I use now a sep function. This means I want to separate hour by a full colon. Then when I will separate it by a full colon, that means that sep function will be used to separate hours, minutes, and seconds. When I run that code this way, I'm told to enter my time now, which is in second. Let me enter 10,000. When I enter this 100,000, let me enter 100,000. When I enter it, I press my enter key. Wow, you can see my time now has been separated into 27 hours, 46 minutes, and 40 seconds. Then the last thing in chapter 2 is about algorithms. You want to know, uh, you have to know what is an algorithm, the definition, what does it mean by algorithm? In short form, the definition of an algorithm. An algorithm is a finite sequence of steps where each step takes a finite length of time. For example, when you want to calculate an area of a circle, the first step is you have to direct is the formula. You will have to say that area of the circle is equals to pi r squared. That is the first step. Then the second step is to compute from now the formula. You will enter your numerical values, and the last step is automatically the answer. So those are an example of an algorithm. This means there are some steps which you have followed. At first, you have directed us that you have used a formula which is pi r squared. Then the second, you are now computing. Then the last step, you are giving the results of the formula which you have used to compute. Now, for example, if you want to test the relationship between degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit, it can be expressed as degrees Celsius is equals to 5/9 times, in parentheses, Fahrenheit minus 32. What does it mean from this formula? It can this means that you can play with this formula either to convert degrees centigrade to Fahrenheit, or either to convert Fahrenheit to degrees centigrade. Now, if you use these codes in cell form, it will give you clearly what an algorithm is. The first thing is to establish the variables. And these variables that you are going to establish is degrees Fahrenheit and degrees centigrade. And I've said is equals to 0. That it means you have set the minimum value of these degrees Fahrenheit and degrees centigrade to be 0. Then that is the first step. The second step is you will define the relationship between Fahrenheit and centigrades or Celsius. And the relationship which you are going to define is that formula, degrees centigrade is equals to 5/9 times degrees Fahrenheit minus 32. Then now, you are going now to prompt a user for degrees Fahrenheit. What does it mean by prompting user? This means now the value which you are going to enter representing the degrees Fahrenheit, which you want to be converted to degrees centigrade. And the last step is now you are giving out the output. And as I told you earlier, when you are giving out the output, you use the print function. Now, as you can see, in this line of codes, I have followed all the rules required by a programmer. The first thing that I have done, have clearly shown my comments. And as I earlier told you in this chapter, that comment are usually shown by the hashtag sign. That shows the steps. As a programmer, you can clearly see that these algorithms has got 4 steps. The first one is to establish the variables. The second one is to define the relationship between F and C. Third one is prompt user for degrees Fahrenheit. And then last one is to report the results. If I run this cell, it will prompt me that to enter the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. Let me enter 1,000, 10,000. When I enter 10,000, then I run this cell. You can see these cells loads forever. Sometimes cells behave this way, and it might be a problem. When you see your cells behave this way, you only do this. You close that Jupyter notebook, close it completely. You can do that way. You close it completely. When you close it completely, you come and start it again. Because today I've experienced those problems. You start the Jupyter notebook again. My Jupyter notebook is starting. Start the Jupyter notebook again. Why is it taking long to start? Yes, it is starting. Start the Jupyter notebook again. You come here. You open your Jupyter notebook again, because sometimes it is the problem with the Jupyter notebook. Then you go up to where we were. Go up to where we were. Yes, we were here. We were here. what this last part. Now you run this code. Now when you run, you can see it has run. It has run. Now when it has run, we want now to change what we have in degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. For example, you enter a value such as 6789, 789, then you press your enter key. It will give you that it is 17.77 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is the end of our chapter 3. We are going to chapter 4, which we will handle now conditional execution. And in conditional execution, we'll start by Boolean expressions. We will define what is a Boolean expression. A Boolean expression is a value which might have only one or two possible, not a value, it is a variable that might have only one or two possible values. And this one or two possible values can either be true or false. As people who have done algebra, in algebra, we have got what we call Boolean algebra. In Boolean algebra, this is where now you have two options, true or false. And when you'll be dealing with categorical data, in categorical data, it is either true or a false statement. The other thing which you need to know about Boolean is it has got different expressions. And this different expression, you have to be very keen between an assignment value that we normally use in Python and a mathematical equality. For example, the expression number one, x is equal to y. In algebra, when you want to say two similar things are equal, you normally write equal sign twice. When you write that equal sign once, it will be an assignment. But right now, we are dealing with Boolean. When you want to say x is equals to y, you will write that is equals sign twice. Then you know very well from inequalities that we have equals to, and equals to in Python is written twice. We have less than, we have greater than, we have less or is equals to, we have greater or is equals to, and we have not equal to. So for example here, this is less than, x is less than y, x is less than or is equals to y. That means x is less than or is equals to y. And the reverse is true. When you want to write now for greater than, you will write x is greater than or is equals to y. So from those examples, you can see our Boolean expression. We have is equals to, less than or is equals to, greater than or is equals to, and the last one is not equal to. So when you are going to handle Boolean expression, you need to master these 6 expression. Is equals to, less than or is equals to, greater than or is equals to, and not equal to. Example. For example, you want to assign some Boolean variables. You have A is equals to true and B is equals to false. Then you want to print. This will automatically give you that A is true and B is false for the first case. Then in the second case, now you want to reassign for A. And this second case, now you want to say that A is equals to false. When you are doing this in Boolean and try to run that cell, you will get that A is equals to true for the first case, B is equals to false for the first case. But now when it comes to the second case, you have now reassigned. And when you have reassigned, you have now reassigned A to false. For the second case, it will give you in both cases A and B is equals to false. Boolean expression. It is an expression comparing numeric expression of equality or inequality. So you need to know what is Boolean expression. It is an expression comparing numeric expression for equality or inequality. An expression can be equal or it can be unequal. So this expression, it compares equality and inequality. And from this example, you can say that x plus 2 is less than y divided by 10 or y over 10. This means it is a Boolean expression because it is comparing two expressions of equality or inequality. And in the first case, that is an expression of inequality. In the second case, you can write the same, but you decide now to include parentheses. It will just give you the same thing. Now, the first Boolean expression that we are going to handle is the simple if statement. Now, as you can remember, when you are doing some arithmetic functions, and for example, we took a number such as 32 divided by 0, it gave us an error. And we used to get that error because we are not defined or we are not using if statement. When you are not using if statement and you take 32 divided by 0, Python assumes that is an error. But in this case, you will realize that we are now going to use an if statement. And when you are going to use this if statement, it will direct Python what to do. For example, we are getting two integers, and these two integers, integer from the user. These two integers are dividend and a divisor. Dividend, it is what we will use to divide. Now we are having two dividend, and we are using the eval function. And as I told you earlier, the eval function is used now to denote that you can either enter an integer or float without specifying. Now, we are going to use now the if statement. Now, when you are going to use the if statement, this means if it has to be followed by a certain condition. And this condition, after you have written that condition, you have to enter to finish that condition with a full colon. Then, if that means it is being followed by a condition, then we have to put a block. What are you expecting Python to execute? That is what we call a block. For example, now in that code, we are saying that we are entering dividend and a divisor. Now, if we are saying, for example, we get a divisor is not equal to 0, what are you expecting Python to do? If it is not equal to 0, that exclamation mark, it means it is not equal to. Let me run this cell 1 and we try to enter. They're saying we enter two numbers to divide. For example, let me enter 32, then comma 0. When I enter 32 and 0, then I press my enter key. What am I going to get? This why am I going to why am I getting the output of please enter two numbers? This is because I've used the if divisor is not equal to 0. So this means that if divisor is not equal to 0, Python will not compute because it doesn't recognize 0. Let me now change and say 32 and 4. 32 and comma 4. When I enter Python now this round, it will compute because it means that 4, 32 can be divided by 4. But when you enter 0, it can't divide. Now, the other thing which I would like you to know is that if statement allows code to be optionally executed. What does it mean? For example, in our case, the printing statement is executed only if the value divisor, if the variable divisor is not zero. As we have seen, when we put the divisor as 0, to 4, the printing statement is executed. Now, the divisor not equal to 0 determines if the statement in the intended block that follows is executed. If the divisor is not 0, the message is printed. Otherwise, nothing is displayed. And as you can have clearly demonstrated, when I wrote 0, the print statement was it was executed. Now, flowchart diagram for this if statement. Is the divisor not equal to 0? Yes. If it is not equal to 0, the print statement will be executed. But if, and what have I said? If it is not equal to 0, the print statement will be executed. But if it will be 0, it will follow the chart no. This means the print statement won't be executed. Now, there are some other things which you need to know about this Boolean, and you knew what is a reserved word. In our last chapter, you saw that if you assign an if statement to a value, you will get an error. Why? Because Python knows if statement as a reserved word. But when you start, and those if, it must be small letter I and small letter f. But when you start with capital letter I and f, it changes from a reserved word that it is no longer a reserved word. So you need to know if small letter f, a small letter I and small letter f are a reserved word. The second thing is that the condition is a Boolean expression that determines whether or not the body will be executed. As you can see in our last example, we said if divisor is not equal to 0, that is a condition statement which must end with a full colon. And then after that condition, it must be followed by a block. If a divisor is not equal to 0, what is Python going to execute? That is what we call a block. So you must write a condition followed by a block. Now, as you can see here, if is followed by a condition, and this condition must end. Then, in the following line, this is where now you write the block. So, for example, when you say if divisor is not equal to 0, the block is what now you are telling Python to execute. And this block must be intended. Intended. What do I mean by intended in English? This block must come after the if statement. As you can see here, I've said if condition, then a block. This block, it has come after if. You can't it can't be aligned with if, or it can't come before if. And you will get that very clearly in examples. Now, as you can see here, it is intended. We have started if x is less than 10, then that is a condition which must end with a full colon. What are you now trying to tell Python to execute? You are telling now Python y is equals to x. And it can also be written this way if it is one statement. If x is less than 10 colon y is equals to x, it will give you the same results. But it may not be written this way. Why is it not to be written this way? If x is less than 10 colon, that is right, y is equals to x. You can see y is not intended. It is aligned with if statement. And it should not be aligned with if statement. It should be written somewhere here. Y should be starting from somewhere here, the way you have seen here. So the first thing which you need to know when you are writing an if statement, the condition must end with a full colon. Then the block must be intended. Example, we are going now to get the integer, two integers from the user. And as you can recall, this is what we call an algorithm because we are going to follow certain steps. Now, when I run this cell 78, you see, please enter two numbers to divide. These two numbers, I've said that two numbers, how are we going to get it? We are going to get these two numbers from the first line of code to get two integers from the user. And as I've been repeating, I'm using the eval function. This means you can enter either an integer or a float. Then I'm now introduced the if statement. You are saying now if divisor is not equal to 0, you can see in my if statement, it is followed by a condition. And this condition as ended by a full colon. Then now, I'm going to write now my block. And this block, you can see it starts from quotient. And it is intent, we will see when it is intended, and when it is intended and I enter 32, the key, it will give me 6.4. But now, let me try to show you another case. Maybe I try to put it there and I run. It will give me an error. This is indentation error. Why? Because now in this second case, I've put my quotient. My quotient is aligning with if. So I have to intend it. When I intend it, it must come slightly after if. When I do that, and I do like that, why is it still giving me the same? When I do that, then I do it that way, you can see now it runs. It has to come after if. And also this print is the first print is within the block. When I try also to do like this in this print, it will give me an indentation error. So let me enter 34 and maybe and 6. When I enter, it will give me. But when also I try to do like this in this second print, because this second print, it is carrying a lot of weight because it has the dividend and the divisor. And that is why if I try also doing like that, it will give me an indentation. It will give me an indentation error. Let me try to enter it. It's supposed to give me an indentation error. No. Yeah, that one is not within the block. The only thing which is within the block is this, the first one. The first one, where we have quotient, where we are dividing now dividend and the divisor. I think you have gotten me there very correct. 67 and 3. it will give. So when you are dealing with if statements, the first thing is that the condition must end with a colon. The second thing, the block must be indented. And this is the same in these ones, in this other example. For example, when I run this cell, x is equals to 10. And now I've said x is equals to 10. So the first one is an assignment operator, but the second one is now an Boolean expression where I've said if x is equals to 10. When you want to say that x is equals to 10 in Boolean expression, you put equal sign twice. But the first one, that is just an assignment. Statement when you are given only one block, you can write it this way. When you write it this way, it will give you the same thing. This means this is the relation equality operator. This is the relational equality operator, not the assigning operator. The assigning operator is equal sign, but the relational equality operator is you write equal sign twice. Then when you go here, if is equals to 1, print 1. So you can see if that is a condition which has ended with a colon, then my print function, I have intended my print function. When I will try to bring this print function to be aligned with the if, it will give me an indentation error. So you have to intend. It has to come after if statement here. It has to come after if statement so that when you run, it gives you. And the same thing you will do in cell 6. When you try to run cell 6, it will give you, because it has followed all the rules of if statements, then that one also it will give you. When you try now, this is where I want you to concentrate. When you put if is equals to 0, you realize now it is not printing. It is not printing. Because now in if statement, when something is 0, Python assumes that there is nothing to be printed. So that is why you see it is not printing anything. The same case to that. Now we are going now to use this if statement to this function. You see, maybe when you want to assign a number, for example, you are a teacher in a school, you have got you have got students maybe up to 9,000 or 9,999, but somebody maybe wants to enter 10,000. So you can come up with a function to limit. Even if this person will try to enter 100,000, it will just limit it to 9,999. And this is application of if statements. Or if somebody wants to enter a negative number, it will give you 0. So for example, you can see in this one, I have started, I want to enter a numerical value. And I will start with an equal function so that it can allow me to enter either an integer or a float function. Then the second is to now to come up with that necessary number that I want to enter. So this is where now I'll start using if function. So I've said my first statement is if numerical number that I want to enter is less than 0, then because that is a condition, I have to end it with a full colon. Then what do I expect Python now to execute? What I'm expecting Python to execute, that is what we call a block. Num, and my block is num is equals to 0. That is numerical is equals to 0. So in my first statement, it means when I enter anything less than 0, I have directed my Python to to head to write it as 0 when I enter anything less than 0. My second statement is if num is greater than 9,999, then num is 9,999. In my condition, I've said if that numerical value that I want to enter is greater than 999, maybe I enter 1 million, 2 million, 10,000. Python should just enter 999 and nothing else or nothing more. So for example, let me start. If I want to enter a negative number, maybe I enter -1. Maybe I enter -1. You will realize Python will not enter that -1, but it will just give me 0 because I've used an if statement. If I enter anything less than number as 0, so when I enter, yes, let me, when I enter, you realize that it will write that -1, but in parentheses, it will give me 0, 0, 0. So anything, if I enter less than 0, it will give me 0. When now, let me try to enter. Yes, I've gotten an indentation error. Let me correct that error. I've gotten that error because you can see there is something which has happened. Now, let me enter 10,000. When I enter 10,000, this way, 10,000, it will give me 9,999 because that is the limit. Even if I enter 1 million, then I enter, it will just write that 100,000, but it will show me the limit is 999. That is one application of if. That is an application of if. You have seen if you have been given only one statement, and if now, if you have been given two statements. The second thing that we are going to handle is if stroke else statement. So in our first example, we say that if the divisor is not equal to 0, and when we entered the divisor as 0, we didn't get any output. But now we are introducing an else statement. This else statement, if it will get the first statement to be the false, it will go and execute the second statement. That is why we call it if-else statement. For example, if you can use the same example, where now we were having two integers, dividend and the divisor, and we said if the divisor is not equal to 0, what should it do? We said it should just divide dividend and divisor. And else, now, this is where now we have a condition. This is one condition. Then we'll come up with two blocks. One condition, but two blocks. So in this, the first one, we said if divisor is not equal to 0, then the block is print dividend divided by the divisor. Else, if now is 0, what are you going to do? So that is why to cater if it is 0, we come up with an else statement. Now, as you can see here, it will execute exactly one of either the block of the else block. The else clause contains alternate block that is executed if the condition is false. So for example, if the condition is false, what does it mean? If the divisor now is 0, That is why the loop will follow to the else statement. And as you can see, the flow diagram of if else statement is the divisor 0. Yes, if the divisor is 0, if true, the divisor is 0, you see it will go and do the division and print the if the what am I trying to say? If the is the divisor not equal to 0, if the divisor is not equal to 0, it will do the division and print the results. But if the divisor is equals to 0, it will castigate the user and it will give the output that you have directed Python to do. For example, if this divisor we enter there is not equal to 0, it will do the division and give the results. But if it is 0, it will castigate and give the division by 0 is not allowed. Let us run this code. And in our first example, let us say 32 and 4. Press enter. It will give the results. So this means that in the first block, Python has found it to be true. But if it founds it to be false, what is it going to do? This is what it's going to do. If it founds it to be false, for example, I put 32 and 0. When I press, it will give me division by 0. It's not allowed. But in our first case, we were just stuck. Please enter two numbers to divide which is 32 and 0. But you are not getting the output when you are only using if statement. But now, when we are using if else statement, it will give us that division by 0 is not allowed. And this is the flow diagram for if else statements. The other thing which I would like you to note is that the if block is a block for one or most. As with all blocks, it must be indented and the condition must end with a full colon. Then the else block of one or more statement to be executed if what am I saying? The else block is a block of one or more statement to be executed if the if condition is false. So if it gets the if condition is false, it will directly loop or jump to the else statement and executes the else statement. And the last thing, I've told you that equality operator, which you have to write equal sign twice, checks for exact equality. This can be a problem with floating points. Yeah, it can be a problem with floating point, since floating points numbers are inherently floating point numbers are inherently imprecise, or you can say are inherently not precise. What do I mean? For example, when you take 0.01 and 0.09, those are not the same thing. But when you try to round off, it becomes the same thing. So that equality operator, it checks for exactness. So for example, in this code 11, when I try to run, it will give me that D1 and D2 are not exact. They are two different things, because that equality checks for exactness. That equality operator checks for exactness. The other thing now, which we are going to handle, is compound Boolean expression. A compound Boolean expression is a combination of two or more Boolean expression using logical operators. So a combination of two or more Boolean expression using logical operators is called a compound Boolean expression. And this combination of two, they can always be joined by and or not. Yeah, they can. Those are three main compound Boolean expression. Those are three main things that normally joins the compound Boolean expression: not, and, or, or. For example, x is less than or is equals to y, and y is less than and is equals to z. That is a compound Boolean expression. Why is it a compound Boolean expression? It is joined by and. So when we are combining two or more Boolean expression, we normally call it compound Boolean expression. And these are some of the examples of compound Boolean expression where they are joined by either and or not. So the other thing is that logical not simply reverses the truth values of the expression to which it is applied. If E is a true Boolean expression, not E is false. If E is a false, not E is true. So what I want you to get from this point is for you to differentiate just a simple Boolean expression and a compound Boolean expression. And this compound Boolean expression, they are normally used, for example, by teachers in grading. You will be using compound Boolean expression. For example, you want to say if 80, uh, you want to say if grade is greater than 80, that is the condition which you want to put. And the second thing now, you want to assign. For example, you want to say if marks is greater than 80, then you want now to assign the grade. This grade, you will now say print A. And the second now statement, that is where now you will be dealing with nested statements. You want to say, for example, if our students now gets between now 74 to 79, that is where now you will use a compound Boolean expression. In a first statement, you have said if max is greater than 80, and say we have said print A. In the second statement, maybe you have said if max is greater than 74 and less than 80, print that is the condition. Then you say now a block, you say print A minus. So this compound Boolean expression, they are normally used for grading. When you want now to run the grading, you will use this compound Boolean expression in combination with some nested if functions. These now are examples. You have said x is less or is equals to y, and x is less or is equals to z. That is one example of a compound Boolean expression because it has been combined by and function. Another further example I've given there, you can follow it. Those are the further examples. Now, that is the end of our lesson today. We have only remained with one subtopic for us to finish chapter 4. And this subtopic is nested conditional. This one, I will finish it next week, or I will post I will record another lesson. Then you will get it via the YouTube channel. Now, a recap of today's lesson. We have covered from conditional execution. This conditional execution, we have covered Boolean expression. In the Boolean expression, you have known now different expression. The first one is the one that shows equality. The second one is the less than. Third one is less than or is equals to. Fourth one is greater than. Fifth one, it is supposed to be greater than or is equals to. Then the sixth one is not equal to. Then we have covered some of the some examples of those expressions, and I've told you an expression can only have two values, either false or true. Then we have gone to Boolean expression, and I've told you it is an expression comparing numeric expression for equality or inequality. We have covered the simple if statement, and in this simple if statement, I've told you when you are writing an if statement, it must be followed with a condition, and this condition must end with a full colon. Then after the condition, it is a block, and a block in Python programming or any other programming language is what you expect Python to execute. After that, you have you have to master this flow diagram of if statement, because if, for example, you have said if the divisor is not equal to 0, when you are using only if statement, it will do the arithmetic and give the results. But if it is 0, it will end the loop. It won't do any arithmetic. That is how we normally present the flowchart for if statement. Then the other thing which we have covered is some more examples of if statements and how it should be applied. And I've told you these are some more examples. Is that when you enter if statement, you must give a condition. For example, if you are a teacher, you will say, if you will not do my work, that is a condition. Then what follows? I will punish you. That is a block. So it is the same thing in Python. When we say if x is equals to 10, and you have already defined x is equals to 10, what are you expecting Python to execute is to print the value 10. Then we have gone further, where now you can use this function, if function, to define the maximum and minimum number which you want to enter. For example, in our first case, we have said if our numerical value is less than 0, what that is a condition. What are you expecting Python to do? You are saying you are expecting Python just to print 0, not to print any number less than 0. But if now your numerical value is less than 9,999, that is now on a maximum end. What are you expecting Python to do? You are expecting Python, even if somebody will enter 20,000, you are now instructing Python, assume all those other things, but just print for me 9,999. Then we have come to if-else statement. As you can now see, in only if statement, If the first statement was false, Python had no option of going to the second step, but it terminates at that point. But now when we use if else statement, this means if the first statement is false, Python now can go and look at the second statement. That is why we use the if else statement. If, for example, Python finds the first statement to be false, it will not terminate the program at that point, but it will go and look for the second option. Now, that is why when in this case, we were dividing 32 by 0. In our first example, where we were only using if, Python terminated the activity at that point. But where now we have used else, Python has become gentle enough to tell us that the division of 0 is not allowed. And you can see also in if and else statement, the condition is 1. But what we have twice is the block. The condition will always remain 1. But the block now will be different. So this is where we use if else. But now, when we'll be handling the nested function, you will realize we will get the elif statement. In that case, it will be somehow different. In that case, the if will have the condition, and we will have the if block. And the elif also will have the condition, and we will have the elif block. But else normally doesn't have the condition. We just give the else block. So that is the thing you need to note. If have both condition and if block, elif have both condition and elif block, but else only have the block. That means, what does it mean? It means when you will be through with all the expressions, you need to start with if, elif, then finish with else. What you finish with is only contains the else block. You are now, the other thing is that chart. The chart in this one now, we have if and else. So you have given Python two options. If it gets divisor is not equal to 0, it will do the division and print the results. But if it will get divisor is equals to 0, it won't do the division, but what it will do, it will just to castigate the user. The other word is to notify the user that operation is not possible. We did some operation on the same if and else statements. And then the last thing which we have handled is a is now compound Boolean expression. And in this compound Boolean expression, as I've told you, is where now you have a combination of two or more Boolean expressions. Where we have combination of two and more Boolean expression, and these combinations are always conjoined by the function and or not. That is what we call the compound Boolean expression. And we passed through examples where I gave x is less or is equals to y, and x is less or is equals to z, which you can either decide to write under parentheses or you can just decide to write without parentheses. You have to pass through those more examples so that you can make yourself comfortable with these codes. Then the last thing, which I will teach in our next lesson, is the nested conditions. In these nested conditions, you learn if can be under another if, else can be under another else, and a leaf can be under another a leaf. So after finishing, this is now our last subtopic. After finishing this, you will be able to grade students using these conditional expressions. Even if you have 1,000 students, you can give you as a teacher, because we have got teachers here like Odalo, you will grade your student with a lot of ease. Thank you very much. Let's meet in our next lesson. Thank you. Bye.